the unseen transformation of a broken heart. There is a silence that arrives not as an absence but as a presence. It follows the closing of a door, the end of a sentence, the final heartbeat of something that was once alive. This is the territory of the broken heart, not a clinical diagnosis but a human one. We are taught to see it as an ending, a failure, a void where light used to be. We measure its damage in tears shed and days lost to a gray inertia, but beneath the visible sorrow, in the quiet, subterranean depths of a self, something else is stirring. An unseen transformation is already beginning its slow, deliberate work. This is not the story of what was lost. This is the story of what is being forged in the dark, away from prying eyes. It begins not with a drama, but with a quiet, internal severance, a click of a telephone. Sentence left hanging in the air, its meaning still falling. A glance across a room that finds no familiar harbor. The moment of fracture is often profoundly still. The world does not crack open, it simply recedes, pulls back by a degree of one, leaving a film of unreality over everything. The colors drain, sounds become muffled, as if the self has been hastily wrapped in layers of gauze. This is the mind's first merciful act of triage. Psychological shock blanket to absorb the initial, unmanageable voltage of the truth. In the immediate aftermath, the architecture of a life reveals itself. What was once perceived as a solid, monolithic structure, a relationship, a future, an identity, shows its true nature, a complex, precarious assembly of interdependent parts. And now, central support has been removed. The first thing to crumble is time. It ceases its linear march, it loops, it stutters. It catapults you back to a moment from a week, a month, a year ago, and the memory is not a recollection but a relocation. You are there again, feeling the sun on your skin, hearing the specific cadence of a laugh that is now absent. Then just as suddenly you are slammed back into the sterile present, this temporal whiplash is the psyche trying to reconcile the impossible. How can a past so vivid lead to a present so desolate? The self, too, becomes a contested sight. The person you were within the context of us is now a ghost, a role with no play to perform. You catch yourself reaching for the phone to share a trivial piece of news, and the aborted motion is a small death. These are the phantom pains of a severed connection, the habits, the private languages, the shared silences. They were the invisible threads that wove your daily existence. Now they hang loose, tangling around your feet. You are left with a collection of disparate parts. The person you were before, the person you became during, and the person you are now. Standing in the rubble, none of them feel entirely whole. None of them feel entirely drill. And the body keeps a score that the mind struggles to articulate. There is a hollowed out sensation in the chest, a literal ache that medicine has no name for. It is the weight of absence, a physical manifestation of the void. Appetite vanishes, not out of sorrow, but because the body's entire system has been redirected, its resources commandeered by a single overwhelming task, processing the new untenable reality. Sleep becomes either a frantic escape or an elusive prize. The nervous system is on high alert, interpreting this emotional cataclysm as a physical threat. It is ready for a fight that does not come, or a flight to a place that no longer exists. This is the raw, unspoken truth of it. Broken heart, it is not a metaphor. It is a biological event, a quiet internal earthquake that leaves the landscape of a life forever changed, its fault lines now visible, waiting for the slow, unseen work of transformation to begin. To understand the true depth of the fracture, one must listen for the ghost in the machine, the one that whispers not just of a recent loss, but of all the losses that came before. A broken heart is rarely a singular event. It is an echo chamber. The present pain resonates with the frequencies of old, unseen wounds, amplifying the sound until it becomes a deafening roar inside the nervous system. This is why the reaction can feel disproportionate, overwhelming, even to the person experiencing it. It is not an overreaction, it is a cumulative one. The psyche is not just mourning the person who left. It is mourning the original promise of safety that has, once again, been broken. The blueprint for this pain was drawn long ago, in the earliest chambers of the heart. Attachment theory provides the first map. From our first breath, we are hardwired to seek a secure base, a primary figure whose presence means safety, whose absence spells danger. The cry of an infant is not a request, it is a survival imperative. When a deep, romantic bond is severed, this ancient alarm is triggered. The adult mind comprehends the nuance, the reasons, the logistics of a parting, but the limbic system, the emotional core of the brain, does not. It registers only one terrifying fact: your person is gone. Panic, the desperate longing, the frantic attempts to reconnect, these are not signs of weakness, they are the primal response of an attachment system screaming into the void, convinced that its very survival is at stake. This is the ghost, the imprint of every separation, every moment of felt abandonment. Etched into the very fabric of our neural pathways, it is the reason a current rejection can feel like a confirmation of a lifelong fear that you are fundamentally unlovable, that you will always be left. The present heartbreak becomes a key that unlocks a haunted library of past hurts. A tone of voice used in a final argument might be the same tone parent used in childhood disapproval. A specific type of emotional neglect can mirror the neglect felt decades prior. The brain, in its relentless efficiency, groups these similar emotional experiences together, so when the current wound is salted, it is salting all the old ones too. And so the grief is not a clean line, it is a tangled knot. There is grief for the lost partner, for the future they represented, but beneath that there is a more subtle, more confusing grief for the wounded child who still lives within the architecture of the self, the one who thought they had finally found the antidote to that old loneliness, only to find it was a temporary balm. This is the cruel duality of a broken heart. You are mourning in the present while simultaneously re-mourning the past. The ghost in the nervous system is not a phantom to be exorcised, but a wounded part of the self that has been reactivated, asking once again to be seen, to be heard, to be finally soothed. Transformation cannot truly begin until this ghost is acknowledged, until its ancient, fearful song is understood not as a prophecy, but as an echo from a time when the heart was first learning how to break. To call it a metaphor is to misunderstand its fundamental nature. The ache is not like a physical wound, it is one. The brain, that meticulous cartographer of experience, maps the terrain of emotional loss onto the same neural pathways that process physical injury. When you speak of a broken heart, the interior cingulate cortex, the region that lights up when you burn your hand or twist an ankle, flares with identical electrochemical distress. This is why the pain feels so visceral, so located. It has a precise address with it. The body, it is a real, measurable event in a tangible, biological world. The mechanism of this pain is one of profound withdrawal, romantic love in its early bonding stages operates on a potent neurochemical cocktail. Dopamine, the molecule of anticipation and reward, floods the system in the presence of the beloved, creating a state of focused craving and euphoria. Oxytocin, the hormone of attachment and safety, weaves a sense of deep, tranquil connection. They are together the chemical architects of the us. When that presence is abruptly removed, the supply is cut. The dopamine pumps dry up, leaving the reward centers of the brain in a state of frantic, desperate hunger. This is the biological root of the longing, the obsessive rumination, the compulsive checking of the phone. It is not merely missing someone, it is the brain shrieking for its missing chemical fix, scrambling to solve the puzzle of its sudden, agonizing absence. Simultaneously, the body's stress response is activated, as if facing a mortal threat. Cortisol and adrenaline course through the bloodstream, the heart rate elevates, sleep becomes fractured as the system is too alert, too vigilant for the danger it cannot see. The appetite vanishes because the body has diverted its energy from long-term projects, like digestion, to the immediate crisis, seeking its missing source of safety. This is the physiology of panic, of a system under siege. The chest feels tight, the breath shallow. Not because of a failing organ, but because the muscles are tense, braced for an impact that never ceases. The body is living in a state of chronic, low-grade fight or flight, its resources slowly depleting. And then there is the true phantom limb, neuroimaging studies reveal something remarkable when people look at photographs of lost loved ones. The regions of the somatosensory cortex associated with physical touch and spatial presence are activated. The brain is quite literally trying to conjure a ghost. It is attempting to feel a hand that is no longer there, to sense a presence in a room that is now empty. This neural firing is the physiological correlate of memory, of habit, of a body that has learned the geography of another and continues to trace its lines long after the map is obsolete. This is the deepest layer of the physiology of absence. It is not just a chemical withdrawal or a stress response. It is the body itself with its own stubborn memory, refusing to accept the new, solitary truth. It keeps reaching for a shadow, leaving the entire system caught in a loop of expectation and disappointment, a tangible aching. Proof of a love that was, and a connection that the body has not yet been told is gone. There comes a point in the quiet aftermath when the initial shock subsides, and a strange new landscape emerges. The rubble is no longer smoking, it has settled into a familiar, almost comfortable terrain. This is the stage of seduction. The pain, once a sharp, invading force, begins to morph into a companion. It offers a peculiar form of solace. To dwell in the memory of what was lost is to keep it, in some small way, alive. The mind, faced with the terrifying prospect of moving forward into an unknown future, begins to romanticize the past. It is a psychological retreat, a return to the last known place of safety, even if that safety was an illusion, even if it was the very place the heart was broken. This is the curation of the museum. One begins to collect and display the artifacts of the lost relationship. A song once shared is played on a loop, not to torture the self, but to feel the specific texture of the sorrow, to prove that what was felt was real. A particular street is avoided not out of practicality, but because to walk it would be to desecrate a sacred ground. The mind meticulously edits the film reel of the past, cutting out the arguments, the disappointments, the slow drifting apart. What remains is a highlight reel of perfect moments, golden and untouchable. The relationship becomes not what it was, a complex, flawed human connection, but a lost paradise. This idealized version is a fortress. It is easier to mourn a perfect thing than to untangle the messy reality of an imperfect one. And within this fortress, a new identity is forged. The one who was left, the one who loved too much, the keeper of the flame. This identity, though born of pain, provides a stable, understandable role in a world that has lost its script. There is a certain power in being the wounded one. It commands a quiet space. It excuses inaction. To heal, to let go, would be to dismantle this carefully constructed self. It would mean stepping out of the known story of the victim and into the unnerving ambiguity of a person who is simply free. And freedom after a long captivity can be terrifying. The ruins are familiar. They are a known quantity. The pain has carved out its own hollow, and the body has grown accustomed to its shape. This seduction is a form of loyalty, a silent vow to never betray the past by embracing the future. It is the fear that to stop hurting is to stop caring, that to laugh genuinely again would be an act of forgetting. So one lingers in the twilight of what was, mistaking the depth of their grief for the depth of their love. But this is a confusion. Grief is the price of admission paid for love, but it is not the love itself. Love is active, generative, and expansive. The grief that becomes a home is a monument, beautiful its way, but cold and lifeless. The turning point, when it comes, is not a grand rebellion against this pain. It is a quiet, almost imperceptible moment of noticing the confines of the museum, of feeling the chill of the marble floor, and for the first time feeling a faint, distant longing, not for the past, but for the sun. The turning point is not a thunderclap. It does not arrive with fanfare or a dramatic declaration. It is a series of quiet, almost negligible moments that, in their accumulation, signal a profound shift deep within the bedrock of the self. It is the morning you wake up, and the first thought is not of them, but of the sunlight patterning the wall. It is the joke you hear that makes you laugh, and for the full duration of that laugh, you are simply a person laughing, not a grieving one. it is the day you realize you have moved through an entire hour without once checking the ghost limb of your phone for a notification that will never come. These moments are not acts of forgetting, they are acts of reclamation. A small, forgotten part of the self has quietly returned home. This is the turning of the soil. It is the internal, often unconscious, decision to stop digging in the ruins for answers and to instead begin preparing the ground for something new, the energy that was once poured into the past, the relentless analysis. The curation of pain begins to redirect. It is a subtle metabolic shift. The body, no longer perpetually braced for a blow, begins to unclench. The breath finds a deeper, slower rhythm. Appetite returns, not just for food, but for the small, sensory details of life. The smell of rain on hot pavement, the weight of a book in the hands, the taste of a perfectly ripe piece of fruit. The world, which had receded into a monochrome haze, begins to bleed its colors back in, faintly at first, then with growing insistence. This process is not a straight line. It is a dance of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Song on a cafe speaker can send you spiraling back into the ache. A dream can feel more real than the waking world, but something has changed. The spiral does not descend as deeply. The stay in the darkness is not as long. The self has begun to develop a new relationship with the pain. It is no longer an identity to be worn, but a weather to be moved through. You learn to observe the storm of grief from a small, sheltered place within, knowing with a certainty that has been earned that it will pass. This is the beginning of resilience, not a toughness that repels feeling, but a flexibility that can endure it, bend with it, and not break. The focus turns almost imperceptibly from what was lost to what remains, and then to what might be. This is not about finding a new person. It is about rediscovering the contours of your own singular life. A long-abandoned hobby calls out from a dusty corner. A friendship neglected during the intensity of the relationship is rekindled and reveals new depths. A curiosity about a new subject, a new place, a new skill stirs from its long slumber. It feels at first like a betrayal. To invest in yourself can feel like you are stealing investment from the memory of us, but this is the essential, quiet rebellion of the turning soil. It is the self, gently but firmly, choosing its own survival, its own potential over the sanctity of its own suffering. The heart is not mending, it is expanding, making room for a future it cannot yet see, but is now finally willing to believe might exist. Healing is not a return to the original form. A broken bone, once mended, is strongest at the site of the fracture. So it is with the heart. The transformation is now complete, its work integrated into the very substance of a person. The self that emerges is not the same as the one that entered the crucible. It has been reconfigured. Its geography is forever altered. The valleys carved by sorrow have become reservoirs for a deeper empathy. The peaks of past joy remain as landmarks, but they no longer define the entire horizon. This new landscape is more complex, more textured, and ultimately more resilient. It knows the rain as well as the sun, and it has learned how to find nourishment in both. The scar tissue is not a weakness, it is a record of endurance. It is the physical memory of the pain now woven into the fabric of the self, providing a strange and unexpected strength. Where there was once a raw, open wound, there is now a quiet understanding. This is the gift of the fracture, a profound and unshakable intimacy with one's own capacity to feel, to endure, and to regenerate. The heart is no longer a pristine, untested organ. It is a veteran of an internal war, and it carries the quiet authority of one who has faced the abyss and learned, slowly and painfully, how to build a bridge across it. It can hold joy and sorrow in the same chamber, without one canceling the other out. This new self relates to love differently. The frantic, dopamine-fueled craving for completion in another has been tempered. The ghost in the nervous system has been heard, its ancient song soothed not by an external savior, but by the mature, compassionate presence of the adult self. Love is no longer seen as a rescue, but as a choice, a conscious daily decision to be vulnerable, to be present, to build something with another whole person rather than seeking someone to fill a void. There is a quiet Confidence that comes from knowing you have survived your own dissolution. You can. Love from a place of abundance, not deficit. You can love without the desperate fear of loss, because you have already met loss and you have learned the contours of its face. The past is not erased, it is instead placed in a new context. It becomes a chapter in a longer, richer story rather than the defining tragedy of the entire narrative. You can speak the old name without a flinch. You can look at the old photographs and feel not the sharp sting of loss, but the gentle, bittersweet warmth of gratitude for a season that has passed. The transformation is complete when the story of the broken heart is no longer a story of victimhood, but one of initiation. It is the story of how you were unmade and how piece by piece you chose to reassemble yourself, not into what you were, but into what you had to become. The heart is not a fixed destination. It is a living, breathing, ever-evolving landscape, and a transformed heart is the most beautiful geography of all, a map of its own survival, capable of navigating the profound and beautiful complexities of a life fully lived.